Hey guys, welcome back. I'm Dave from mygunvalues.com, and today we're going to bring you out a big old 357. This is a Smith Wesson model 686, and 357 is the chambering. So this might end up, depending on how long this one ends up, we might end up breaking this one up into two pieces. But the first thing we're going to do is we're going to cover the history of the 357 cartridge itself, and then we're going to dive into this particular one. The 357 comes from the 38 Special. 38 Special was introduced, depending on which reference you want to look at, either 1899 or 1902. Originally, for a short while, as a black powder round, then it made the transition to smokeless. By the 1920s, the 38 Special had kind of become the go-to firearm for law enforcement. The 1911 did come out in 1911. It was big, it was heavy. America was not the same place it is today with gangs running around the streets. The cops liked the short, smaller revolvers. So, as a general rule, and 38 Specials were not terribly expensive, always a factor, 38 Specials became kind of the go-to round for police work in this country, really up to the advent of the 40 Smith & Wesson, which has pretty much become the standard today. But 38 Specials reigned up until then in most applications, despite what you might see about, Dirty Harry and Clint Eastwood and the 44 Magnum. You really didn't use a lot. You really just didn't need it. It wasn't felt that it was necessary. Now, that changed in the gangster era. You had the Machine Gun Kellys and the Bonnie and Clydes and those types running around shooting. I mean, they would shoot cops, they would shoot police, they would shoot anybody who got in their way. They'd use fast cars, heavy cars, and the 38 Specials would not do the job. They wouldn't penetrate the windshield, they wouldn't penetrate the doors, they didn't have the knockdown power. So, in the early 30s, and I want you to think about this with product liability today, Smith & Wesson came out with what was called the 3844. What they did was they took the standard 38 Special cartridge, loaded it to a higher pressure. Today we would call that a plus P designation. And they chambered it in what was known as their 3844 Outdoorsman. There was another one, and the name escapes me. And you would put, the idea was they would come with a 3844 head stamp, and the idea was you would only load 3844 cartridges into a 3844 revolver, big, heavy, end frame Smith & Wesson 44 caliber revolver. It was inevitable that those things were going to make it into smaller, lighter 38s. Now, while most Smith & Wessons were okay, there was a lot of cheap manufacturing going on. There were a lot of substandard 38 Specials back then. Most of them aren't around today, but there were a lot of them back then. So they chambered this 3844 to give the police a little harder hit, a little more knockdown power, a little more bullet speed. It was successful. Problem was, there was always the worry that somebody was going to stick a 3844 into a small frame 38 Smith & Wesson or 38 Special revolver and blow it sky high. So along comes a gentleman, and forgive me, you know, guys who've been in this a while are going to know this, but this is for the people who don't. There's a gentleman by the name of Elmer Keith. Elmer Keith was the handgun writer up through the 1960s and 70s. He had a stroke in, let's see, he was born in 1899, had a stroke, I believe, in 1981, and passed away in 1984. But from the mid-1920s through the 1970s, this guy was the handgun writer for big bore, heavy loaded revolvers. I mean, his opinion mattered a lot. Well, he went to some of the manufacturers and he tried to persuade them to come out with an even heavier loaded cartridge. And his idea was you lengthen the case 1/10 of an inch over a standard 38 special, and that way you could not chamber one of these in a 38 special revolver. You make the revolver specifically for the cartridge, and the other thing was then you could shoot the 38 specials in the 357 if you wanted to. That's a subject for another time. It's not a process I endorse a lot, because then you end up having a problem cleaning out the chambers, but I digress, and we'll do that another time. Elmer also introduced this bullet. It's a Lyman mold. It's a semi-wad cutter style bullet, and if I'd have been thinking and had my head not up my tail end, let me lean over here out of camera range a minute. That is what the bullet looks like. Cast from my alloy, it's about 170 grains. Sized, lubed, and cast, they average about 170.5 grains is what mine average. It's a little heavy. Most 357s shoot 125, 140, 158 grain bullets. I'm an old-fashioned guy. I like heavy bullets for caliber. And the 350, this particular 357 will handle it no problems. So that's the bullet that's in these cartridges. Again, if you've seen our video on the Sea Camp, we're not doing any shooting right now because the range is under about 2 feet of water. That just happens this time of year to me. If you've watched some of our other videos, you know that in the next couple of years, it's going to take a little while. I personally will be moving to northeastern Wyoming, and the property there will allow me to have a 400-yard range, and the only thing I'll have to fight with is snow, and that doesn't worry me. So in the meantime, I have to make do with what I've got. So that's a brief history on the 357 Magnum. It is a very popular round even today. You know, I like it. I enjoy shooting it. So enough about the round and the bullet that's in it. Now we'll get to this particular gun. It's a Smith Wesson. It's a model 686-6. Now, those of you who don't know, and I know this doesn't show up well, Smith & Wesson's model numbers, let me back this up a minute. Original Smith & Wessons before 1957 did not have model numbers stamped on them for the most part. Sometimes they were named and the name would be written on the barrel. The majority of the time you got to look at features and know what you're looking at to figure out which Smith & Wesson you have. In 1957, they went to a numbered system. The numbered system, stainless revolvers didn't exist then. The numbered system would have, say, model 29 here if it was a 44 Magnum. That's the one that jumps to mind real quick. The model 63 was a 22, and so on and so forth. The advent of the stainless revolvers in the 70s brought out, they decided, what Smith & Wesson decided to do was they would put a 6 as the first digit on any revolver that was stainless. The reasons for this I'm not quite sure of, but that's what they did. And then, what you remember I said this is a 629-6. Anytime Smith & Wesson did a change, you know, in the early days they would change from 5 screw to 4 screw to 3 screw side plates. Maybe they had recessed cylinders here where the rim slipped inside the cylinder. And of course with this one it doesn't. As you can see, it sits on the back of the cylinder. Okay, so anyway, they had switched to that numbering system, and the dash, all the dashes represent is a change. Well, what this has done is this has made some variants more valuable than others. Early Smith & Wessons right now are really going through a surge in price and popularity. Not sure how long it's going to last, but right now they're, you know, early Smith & Wessons in high grade are, you know, really it. This model was produced with the rubber finger groove grips. You know it's a Smith & Wesson grip. It's got the S&W logo on it. This checkering here is a target, what they call their target hammer. I haven't even looked at this. I just acquired this gun here about a month or so ago. Haven't fired it a lot yet. Real common thing for Smith & Wesson is the red insert in the ramp front sight. I'm not necessarily a fan. My eyes don't pick that red up real well, but I don't like altering original guns, so it'll probably stay there. This one comes with the adjustable, fully adjustable rear sight. You've got a screw right there to move left and right, and you've got a screw right here to change your elevation. Also has, if you look at our website, sometimes in the description you'll see a full underlug or a shrouded ejector rod listed. This one's a full underlug with the ejector rod for the cylinder covered by the shroud. The extra weight out here kind of helps hold it steady if you're shooting this thing offhand, and that's why people do it. This is more of a target revolver. At loaded, it's close to 50 ounces loaded. This thing's pretty heavy to be hauling around on your hip all day, as compared to some of the other weapons out there. So this one's more of a target revolver, little long, a little cumbersome for standard hip carry. So you would normally see this more on a target range, although I'm sure guys carry it all the time, you know, for personal defense, or, you know, ranchers are probably carrying it in case they come across a coyote or whatever. The 686-6, again, it depends on the catalog, depends what you look at. Introduced 2010-ish. This was lightly used when I picked it up. Something you always want to look at right here is where at your cylinder barrel gap right here in the back. If you got a lot of flame cutting, powder granules can escape right here and cause all kinds of problems up here on the top strap. So you can tell how much a gun's been fired by looking primarily at this area. Obviously, if the cylinder's been turned at all, there will be a mark right here between the stop notches. This one's very, very, very lightly marked. So this gun has not been fired much at all. Like I said, there is some I can see some powder residue in there, so it's at least been fired a few times or there was powder residue in there when I got it. So it had at least been fired a few times before I acquired it. So that's a 686. They've made a number of special issues and configurations, you know, since 1980 when this model was introduced. Currently, they're all going for about the same money, except for some of the special issues. This one is about a $600-ish weapon. but that's, you know, that's about standard for these. But, you know, I was at an auction yesterday recording prices, and I saw a model 63, which is the little, it was a 4-inch barreled 22, and that thing went up for $750. It was an early one, and it was in nice condition, and there was 2 guys that wanted it, and that's actually, there was 3 guys that wanted it. So conditions everything when it comes to pricing, guys. So when we get some decent weather and the range dries out so I can shoot safely, we're going to bring all these guns back. I'm going to be shooting videos on over the next few weeks. We'll bring all the guns back out and we'll shoot them one at a time. Currently ready to go, I have the C-Camp. I have a Ruger Blackhawk and .30 carbine. We shot a video on a while back and it kind of got pushed to the wayside. That's going to come up. There's a .30 carbine that I should be acquiring in a couple of weeks, an M1 carbine from World War II, and we'll probably try to put those together. And we've also got coming up, there's a Remington rolling block in .43 Spanish coming up, and there's a video on the 30-06. And before you get really bored, we have a pump, a semi-auto, and a bolt gun, and we'll be doing a side-by-side comparison on all those. Just teasing you with what's coming up, so keep in mind we will be shooting everything when weather permits, and we're not going to run the risk of any ricocheting bullets. But for now, thanks for watching. You know, if you like what you see here, hey, you know, give us a comment or subscribe. And if you'd like to talk to us on a gun values issue, you can't find what you need on the website, you can hit the contact us button at mygunvalues.com. And I see every one of those that comes through, so if there's any questions, I'll help you, or one of my 2 partners will help you, depending on the nature of your question. Thanks for watching and have a good day.